Welcome back to the Real Estate School, where we show you how to analyze real property investment examples, new and old. Before we begin, if you find the content on the channel useful, please take a moment to hit subscribe. This allows the channel to grow, and we can continue to bring you these videos more regularly. Now let's dive into the video. Today we are looking at Matheson House, located in Telford. First up, the investment summary page. Telford is a secondary office location to the east of the West Midlands and lies within Shropshire. The office is quite large, standing at 134,000 square feet. The building is single, let to a good tenant who has invested a lot of money in the property. The passing rent seems quite low at £11, and the reviews are index-linked. There is a short amount of time remaining on the lease, and the agents are talking about redevelopment potential, which would likely be a complete redevelopment to residential houses. The building has a good EPC rating, and the asset is freehold. On the next page, we can see a deeper dive into the location, Telford. Here we can see that nearby locations of note are Shrewsbury and Wolverhampton, with further out major locations being Birmingham and Stoke-on-Trent. Telford has good transport links by road, and rail links to Birmingham are established, albeit the journey time is fairly arduous, and the travel time to central London is over 2 hours. In reality, most businesses in Telford locate there due to lower overhead costs, and their staff are likely to be local, driving into work. The town is a secondary office location, with the majority of demand historically being driven by local government or businesses working on public sector contracts. The town centre mainly comprises of a shopping centre, albeit there has been more amenity added in recent years. In summary, the location is not a high-demand office area, and immediately needing to let up a building of this size would be a concern for me. There are a lot of other nearby buildings, more modern than this one, and there are plenty of small out-of-town office parks, which are similarly easy to get to with plenty of parking. On the next page, we can see the property description. The building is quite old, having been built in 1991. The tenant has spent money upgrading the building, providing air conditioning upgrades, and fitting out the space to their corporate standards. Given the age of the building, if it were to remain in office use, I would still need to see a building survey, as I would anticipate further costs. There is plenty about the specification which is good: raised floors for electrical services, air conditioning, large reception for visitors, staff canteens, on-site gym, and excellent parking on-site. However, what I point out is the building is built in an irregular layout, and externally, the building is really showing its age and is a far cry from what is expected of modern buildings. To the right is a site plan. It can be seen that the property comes with a lot of land. At present, this provides good parking for office users. In future, it could allow for the kind of quantum required to make a residential development stack up financially. Finally, the asset is held freehold. This means the ultimate title interest lies with the seller, and there is no superior landlord to deal with or to pay a ground rent to. On the next page is the accommodation schedule and floor plans. The floor areas show the split of areas within the building. We can see the premises is a large building. Generally, lower floors are largest and higher floors are smallest. We know from the previous slide that there are 2 passenger lifts to upper floors, which is vital for staff and clients. More important is that the lifts are modern and don't feel claustrophobic, or that you are stepping into the 1980s every time you'd like to change floor. The external picture to the bottom left reinforces the point made earlier that externally the building looks dated and is unlikely to appeal to the top tier of office occupiers. We can see the floor plans where it shows that much of the workspace in the building is situated in a narrow square formation around various courtyards. whilst it is nice to have a courtyard-style layout where staff can look at the window and see the natural environment. This does make the internal space much less flexible and often feels quite cramped to work within. Buildings of this nature can also be hard to navigate for those that are not familiar with the building. It also appears to result in what is quite a cramped central core that services the whole building. The next page, we come to the tenancy details. The first thing to know is that the building is left at a rent that reflects $11 per square foot. On the face of it, this does seem low for an out-of-town office building. However, when you factor in that there is a lot of available buildings in Telford and that this building is rather large, I suspect the rent being paid is low, but I would not be confident in achieving much more in the short term. If the tenant were to leave, it would take some time to re-let the space. Even if letters were at a higher rate per square foot, I would not anticipate the total income getting back to this level for at least 2 years, if not more. One plus is that the income is rising yearly, the RPI-linked reviews happen every 12 months, and so your return would improve over the short term. There are 3 remaining reviews, albeit the review in the last year of the lease happens just 2 months before lease expiry, so a limited uplift payable there. However, looking at the tenancy comments, it seems the current landlord has agreed with the tenant that the rent will be reduced by $580,000 between July and June 2026, and then again from July 2026 and July 2027. I suspect the tenant had a break option in their lease and have negotiated periods of rental reductions in order to remove their break option. This wouldn't immediately raise concerns. These types of asset management deals are undertaken regularly in order to protect the landlord's position in terms of lease end. What it does show is the tenant has strong bargaining power, and this asset is more about ensuring it does not become vacant rather than increasing the rent a tenant would be prepared to pay. So who is the tenant paying the rent? They are Capgemini, an IT consulting company that do a lot of work with HMRC and have a global revenue of $22 billion. The UK business, which is the entity on the lease, is clearly a very strong business. Their turnover has grown year on year. The pre-tax profits are over doubled since 2020, and their total net worth is strong. Overall, an investor would have very little concerns about getting the rent paid. On the next page, we can see the development angle advertised. It is being suggested that the unused land to the back of the plot be used to develop 33 houses. I suspect a development plot of this small size is unlikely to attract any interest from major house builders, and you would be dealing with independent builders or an affordable housing provision in conjunction with Homes England. Whilst this could be a useful angle, I suspect a lot of work is still required to get that off the ground. It is something that could potentially impact pricing, but only speculatively. One thing to be careful of, you must check the tenant's lease, as upon letting it is likely the whole site was let to them to ensure they were responsible for the upkeep. To sell that land off, you will need to ensure the tenant surrenders that part of their demise. The office building, after demolition costs and factoring in what it is worth now, is still likely in its best and most profitable use, and starting again might not be viable. It is a better strategy to see if the current tenant will rehear their lease. Begin a new lease term of at least 5 years. If they were to do that, I doubt it would make sense to redevelop the whole site, although it would then be in the realms of dealing with the proper house builders who can operate at scale and get projects through the planning system. The final page is detailing sales within the investment market. It is quite difficult to establish a tone of yields or prices per square foot from this table. They seem all over the place. That is because the secondary office market is quite fragmented at the moment. Many businesses are still allowing people to work from home. Demand is very patchy and location-specific. Then, to entice people into the office, businesses want best-in-class space to compete with being at home, And that means most buildings require a lot of capital expenditure for not a lot of financial return. Most investors in this market are aggressively discounting their bids and looking to buy something at opportunistic pricing. Finally, the property is available for £10.58 million, with a net initial yield of 13.0% and a capital value of £78 per square foot. All of that sounds fairly reasonable, but given the risk involved if the tenant leaves, I think to sell this building right now, pricing will be much lower. Thanks again for watching this video from the Real Estate School. We really appreciate your support, so do hit that like button and subscribe to help us bring you more content. One final thing, we are highly experienced RICS assessors, and for our first 100 subscribers, we will be providing unlimited APC support, subject to you being on the commercial pathway. Get in whilst it's free.